Welcome to the 18th episode of Patio Pondering, the podcast. Today is a solo episode with no guests, and it is a day later than I normally publish. It's going to come out on a Tuesday instead of a Monday morning, and there's two reasons for that. First, last week marked 5 months of my Patio Pondering reflections on LinkedIn. Every business day of the last 5 months, I have been posting a reflection, a thought, a memory, some sort of writing on LinkedIn. And over those days, I've had several topics that resonated with people, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The other auspicious occasion is that today marks 100 days since I stopped drinking bourbon and any form of alcohol. We already talked about that in my 5th episode of Patio Ponderings. It was at that time 60 days without bourbon. Some of my reflections on why I did it. But here we go. This is my solo episode talking about 5 months and 100 days. That's kind of funny. That sounds like something that Mike Rowe would title as one of his podcasts. Here we are, 5 months and 100 days. Over those two milestones, a lot of things have happened. Let's start with reflecting on 100 days without bourbon. Being a scientist and not a math geek, but a numbers guy to a certain degree, I did a little bit of a calculation, and I was drinking a lot of bourbon. Over the last 100 days, I would have consumed at least 22 1.75 liter bottles of bourbon. That was a big bottle every 4 to 5 days. And over those past 100 days, that would have cost me about $1,200. So that's the upside. Saved $1,200 over the last 100 days. So just to recap, the revelation or reason for me to stop drinking is, as I mentioned, there was a couple embarrassing moments from my children at my daughter's wedding. And then my 15-year-old had a birthday party and we were having a good time. And I didn't remember everything from the party because I was cooking, helping everybody. And as I was cooking and running the grill, I had a bourbon in my hand. And, I don't know how many bourbons I had. So that next morning I was like, I'm done. I got to be done. So here I am. But that doesn't mean that I'm judging people and I'm one of those teetotalers like, I stopped drinking, so you have to stop drinking. No. That's not me. This is my journey. This is what I'm doing. In fact, like I mentioned before, I enjoy the story of bourbon. I enjoy the story of the different beers. I enjoy people talking about the flavors that are imparted into this wine and why this grape is so much better, and comparing and contrasting the Scotch distilleries and how the limestone in Scotland is different than the limestone in Kentucky. Those are really cool stories. I just cannot add that to my palate right now. The other side benefit is I've probably saved a few calories and haven't lost weight, but I've maintained weight, which is a good thing. As I look back on the last 100 days, the hardest part for me wasn't the drinking, the desire to have that bourbon or beer in my hand. It was just the habit. The habit of the day's done, I'm going to go pour my bourbon, grab my ice, and we'll sit down with the bourbon in my hand. I'm just going to sit here and watch TV or talk with my wife. It was just habit. And I don't remember having those pangs of, man, I got to have it. I did not have that challenge. It was the habit. It was the ceremony about having that bourbon. So that made my journey easy compared to other people, not having that hunger pang to have more bourbon. One of the side benefits is there was some more mental clarity. I didn't have to worry about what I did the night before. I didn't have to worry about forgetting what happened at Christmas or the party or when my sister and my brother-in-law were over. And I think I've gotten some better sleep, maybe. The biggest thing I've struggled with is the word sobriety or the term clean and sober. And I don't know, to be honest, why that bothers me. When I was sitting down to think about this episode and I used ChatGPT to help me craft my script and what I wanted to talk about, the word sobriety and the term clean and sober, when it hit that script, just did not seem like it applied to me. Maybe it's the mental image that you have about being sober, of that drunk, he finally cleaned his act up and he's sober. Maybe it's because it makes you feel like a real alcoholic. maybe it's a dose of reality when you hear that word. Maybe the other thing that comes in is that it's got a permanency to it. Oh, I'm sober. And then what happens if you slip up and you're no longer sober? I don't know. Maybe I don't need a perfect reason why I don't like the word or the term clean and sober. I just don't like it, even if it might be perfectly applicable to me. Maybe I don't like it because it's a harsh reality that I was an alcoholic, or I am an alcoholic. Maybe. But regardless of how I feel about the word sober and the phrase clean and sober, I haven't had a bourbon in 100 days. And I miss the habit. I miss sitting down and having the clank of the ice in the glass. I just don't miss the baggage that came with it. And I remember somebody mentioning the other day about how they stopped drinking. It happened to be another swine nutritionist. And he said, I didn't drink a lot, but when I drank a lot. And I think I fit that mold. So here I am, 100 days, clean and sober. The other thing that we're celebrating today is 5 months of me blogging every single day. What started as a suggestion from my therapist the day that I got let go from Kent to do something every day so that you're not laying in bed or sitting around doing nothing has turned into 5 months of me posting something every single day. And the other thing that played into me writing every single day was the mental health aspect of it. I got to exercise my brain and exercise my brain in a way that just working didn't before. We all fall into this. We fall into our job, and our job is to do this. And I think about that. I'm thinking about my friend Brian laying the landscaping irrigation. His thoughts are, well, how do I need to get the machinery? How do I ensure that I got enough pipe? And how do I have the right fitting? The mental exercise is about your job. You don't typically get outside of your job and exercise your brain on other thoughts. Well, I've exercised my brain quite a bit, and I've had reflections on generosity. I had a couple of reflections on sharing about National Pork Producers Council. I had controversial one talking about Pork the Other White Meat campaign. I had criticisms of former bosses, criticisms of bosses that friends of mine have, observations about working in the office. I've covered a pretty fair share of life in my reflections over the last 5 months. But there are a few that really stand out, and the numbers geek in me, I've got a spreadsheet that every morning after I post my Patio Pondering to LinkedIn and then share on Facebook, I go through and look at the impressions. So it's engagement calculation that takes into account number of people reached, the reactions, comments, and shares, and it's just a simple equation that comes up with an engagement rate. And over the last 5 months, I've got a few of those that really had some good engagement. The one that had the most engagement rate was when I talked about the generosity shown by one of my landlords when I was cutting beans around their farm. And it happened to be a Saturday night, and they had cooked homemade pizza and wings, and one of the sons came out and rode with me while we ate the pizza and wings and talked about his life and farming. And then a son-in-law came out, and I learned more about his work. Actually, he works for one of my other landlords, and that's the only job he's had since he graduated in the late 90s. The generosity that they shared with sharing the food and opening a gate and let me borrow a bike so I could get back to the semi. They didn't have to do that. They could have just stayed in their company shed and enjoyed supper by themselves, but they chose to share what they had. Another one that had a lot of traction was me complaining about losing our insurance agent. And the complaint wasn't about that my insurance agent left. It was the complaint that there was no transparency from the agency. No heads up. Hey, just so you know, your agent left. We've got you covered. Here, we don't know who your new agent is, but we'll let you know. The other thing that I've noticed in watching my tracks is maybe I'm trying too hard. The impression rates have gone down. And I had the most impressions when I first started doing this, and before it was more formalized, it was just me sitting at my outdoor kitchen with the computer and typing. Now my process has turned into writing, relying on some artificial intelligence to help me perfect my words, to better edit the thoughts that I have so that the message I get across is not so raw and sophomoric. And I've tried to turn every one of my Patio Pondering blogs into something positive with some sort of call to action at the end. How has this, in fact, impacted your business? How can we do better as we lead people? How can you be better in this topic as a worker? Trying to make us think about how we can be better members of society, better family members, better workers, better bosses. And maybe I'm just trying too hard, but the traction has fallen off. But I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. The other thing that has impacted me, and this kind of goes hand in hand with a little bit of the sobriety, which I really hate, we talked about that, is maybe a little more mental clarity about what I'm thinking and how I can share those feelings. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm there, maybe I'm not. But one thing it has done is gotten me out of bed every morning, helped me to think about things, and instead of just going about my life, get up, eat, go on, I actually have to have a better plan than I had in the past, because writing these words and also working on my podcast is a thought process that is different than just being a swine nutritionist when I have a farm, budgets to do, and it's a more regimented task. This takes a little bit of mental gymnastics. It's exercising my creativity bones and muscles that I have to exercise differently. It's good. The other thing that has come out of this, and I'm trying to figure out how I can encapsulate it into a book or something, is every morning when I get up and enjoy my cup of coffee, I take a picture from our backyard landscaping. And I try and get a different perspective around our water feature, our outdoor kitchen, and the plantings that Kim has. And it's a diary of the change of the seasons. So I started doing that right before Labor Day. Today's the 4th of February. So we've gone through vibrant flowers and vibrant greens and seeing the last of the peppers and the first frost and then the first snow and then things dying and watching those plants that hang on until the very last moment when the cold gets to them. We've watched the bubbling in the water feature. We've seen it freeze. We've seen it thaw. We've watched how the snow fell. It's been a nice diary of watching how that changes. Now, being a farmer, I'm probably more in tune with the changes of nature. But even then, if you don't look at it every day, look at it. Be forced to go out there and see the dead chrysanthemums, the way the ice forms through the bubbler. If you don't take the time to look at those, you don't pay attention. You don't notice the changes. Sure, we look at, hey, it's cold today, it's foggy today. But to see that from a perspective of trying to capture an image that captures the essence of that moment is something I've never done before. And I'm envious of those in my family. Kim can take pictures. My aunts are wonderful at capturing images. Like my friend Heidi Hood, she can look through a lens. And probably the one that I'm most envious of is Malachi Malcolm. And the pictures that he's taken of us and that he shares, those are some of the people that are inspiring me as I try and take a picture of our life in our backyard, a microcosm of our life and a microcosm of our farm. So that's a side benefit that I'm really having fun. So we're sitting here at that crossroads, 100 days without bourbon, 5 months of daily blogging. I don't know where this journey is really heading. I'm still interviewing for jobs. I had one yesterday, sent a resume out 2 days ago, so I'm still waiting. But I know that I'm paying more attention to things in my life than I did before. I don't know if that's because I don't have alcohol through my system or because I'm exercising those observation muscles. I do know that with my podcasting, I'm asking more questions. and dare I say better questions. And I know my mom would be happy to hear me asking those questions and, in her words, be a better conversationalist, trying to get to the root of why somebody answered it, how something impacted them, why they chose to do something. And I got a feedback from somebody after listening to one of my podcasts that said, you did a good job of trying to get your guests back on topic as they tried to get off the topic we were talking about. Maybe that's an upstart. It made me a better conversationalist and interviewer. As I said, we don't know where our journey is going to lead. After I get done recording this, I've got a friend from Iowa I'm going to interview for a podcast episode. I've got a guest lined up for Thursday's episode. I'm going to continue my journey of trying to find those nuggets of what make people tick based upon their ag roots and how agriculture affected them. I'm going to continue to blog. I'm going to continue to try and be edgy without being too edgy. And we'll see where this journey takes me. I'm actually having fun doing it. And we'll see how it transforms as we get into harvest and I get into a new job. But I want to challenge everybody that listened to this to start something new. You know, I talked about Malachi Malcolm and what he's done with his videography and photography. It started with a first picture for him. For me, it started with that first blog. I had no intention of doing this every single day and turning it into a Patio Pondering and thinking about having a platform, and that Patio Pondering had a YouTube page and it was going to have its own social media. I had no idea I was going to do that when on that August day when I sat down and started typing. So I challenge you to do something different. I also challenge you to not let labels get in the way of you being you. Now, in my case, that word sobriety, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. But does it fit? I guess. Maybe. But I'm not letting that definition define me or take me away from the journey I'm on. In closing, I want to thank everybody for coming along with me on my journey, whether it's listening to one of my podcasts, whether it's reading one of my Patio Ponderings on LinkedIn or where I share it on Facebook. Thank you. I appreciate everything you've done to encourage me, to agree to be one of my interviewees, to that unheard prayer that you said for me. Here we are, 5 months on of writing, 100 Days Without Bourbon, and my 18th podcast episode. I challenge every one of you to step outside your box, think about something new, and grow with me. Follow me along. Thank you, everybody.